Thank you very much, Layli, and I appreciate so much the speaker who had to leave, but we learned so much from her. At this time, I know Mr. Hayes had an urgent meeting. I see he has joined us um, as a presenter. Mr. Hayes, are you still available or are you still tied up in a meeting? We'd love to hear from you. If not, we'll move on to our next speaker. Mr. Martin Hayes with LIA. I know that we have a group in Monrovia at the Liberian Airport Authority who are participating in the workshop. But I do know that Mr. Hayes, the acting managing director, has been called into a meeting. Mr. Hayes, are you available? If not,
yes.
Good afternoon.
Hello?
Good afternoon. So we're hearing an echo. We'd very much like to hear from you, and I'd like to introduce you if you are prepared to make remarks. Are you prepared today? And I can go ahead and introduce you. Thank you. I will be happy to introduce you. And please check your mic. We're still hearing a little bit of an echo.
All right. I'm in an environment where the processing the training with the Liberia Airport Authority and a team that part of the training. And in this environment, there is an air cool in the environment. I'm sorry for the interference of that.
Oh, it's much better.
Everything is going fine here.
Very fine, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce you and then we'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much. Mr. Martin Hayes is Acting Managing Director. Oh, thank you, sir. I'm going to introduce you now. Mr. Martin J. Hayes is Acting Managing Director and Deputy Managing Director for Administration for the Liberian Airport Authority, or LAA, in Robertsfield, Liberia, where he has served since 2018 in this leadership role. Mr. Hayes is a graduate of AME Zion University in Liberia with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He holds an advanced certificate in capacity building of exporting characteristic consumer goods for African countries from the Academy for International Business Officials of the Ministry of Commerce, People's Republic of China. Through his strategic leadership and strong organizational management, as well as his crisis management competency and effective team leadership, LAA has implemented increased security and information management for a more positive traveler experience. And for those of you who are not with us yesterday, just to let you know that Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport and LAA have signed a sister airport agreement, and this human trafficking workshop is consistent with the policy and opportunities that we have put forward in the vision in our strategic relationship. At this time, please help me welcome Mr. Hayes. It's over to you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you. Go ahead, please. Mr. Hayes? You're on mute. Uh-oh. Mr. Hayes, can you hear us? You're on mute. We can't hear you. There you are.
Okay.
Thank you. Over to you now.
All right, that's good. Thank you for the introduction. At the Rabat International Airport and the Liberia Airport Authority, things are working fine when it comes to the security issue of human trafficking. We try to put everything in tight in order to observe the rules to protect the issues of human trafficking at the Rabat International Airport, where we know that human trafficking is an issue that is a global issue that takes place around the world. So for this manner and for this cause, and the Rabat International Airport, and in collaboration with the Liberia Airport Authority, put every rules in place in order to manage the human trafficking in the Republic of Liberia. At our border point, we have a security system put into place that manage the issues of human trafficking. We work along with the immigration section, where they're responsible for tracking issues when it comes to traveling out of the country, and the security apparatus. We have a group of security apparatus that try to work along with teams in order to have the blocks of human trafficking and the right and respecting the right of people at our airport. But we could go duty into our process, but there's a little issue that we have for today that I'm having a meeting, but I just try to sling in to see that this process go through. So I'm trying to make it very short in order for us to have this meeting while my team will be listening, because we have a tight schedule for today, many meetings that we have in our ballroom.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hayes. And we clearly understand the opportunities and the challenge that you're facing today. We welcome your leadership team at LAA. And just to inform you that Layli and I will actually be in Monrovia in December the 12th or 13th. And we'd like to schedule some time to do a focus group, a more hands-on focus group with your team. And I will be coordinating that with you and Human Resources, so we can get on the ground to have a little bit more interaction and engagement with your staff. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, you're highly welcome at the time you'll be coming. You're highly welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes, and thank you for your leadership in this effort. Wishing you all the very best for the day.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, we're looking forward to the opportunity of working with LAA in the very near future, and we'll certainly keep you informed as a part of our final report out that will be presented to the embassy in January of 2022. So if you're looking at the agenda, I think we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for your brief remarks. At this time, we're going to be focused on session 2, transportation partner presentation and group discussion. Please let me take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Jory Hendricks from Brussels Airlines. Brussels Airlines has been a long-standing airline partner supporting Liberia's travel and tourism industry before Liberia's civil conflict, post-conflict, during Ebola, post-Ebola, pre-COVID, and post-COVID. SM Brussels, as a strategic partner, continues to show their commitment to Liberia, and we appreciate their ongoing leadership and support. Today, I'm pleased to introduce to you a new friend, Mr. Jory Hendricks from SM Brussels Corporate. After studies in human science and modern languages, Mr. Hendricks started his career in aviation in 2002, in the domain of security. He started working for Brussels Airlines in 2006 as a security officer. He became a security, crisis, and emergency response manager in 2013, responsible for planning and review of procedures in the fields of aviation security, company and cargo security, training, audits, fraud, immigration, emergency response, and business continuity. In March of 2021, he was appointed as head of security, crisis, and emergency response. Working for Brussels Airlines gave him the unique opportunity to get to know some of the most beautiful places on Earth, and very specifically on the African continent. His very first visit in sub-Saharan Africa was to Liberia, and he has since told me that ever since he has felt a deep connection to this beautiful country of Liberia and the potential that it has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me offer to you to make remarks and to provide a presentation, Mr. Jory Hendricks. Jory, over to you.
Well, thank you very, very much for this very nice introduction. Didn't see that one coming, but it was really, really nice to hear this. And actually, I want to thank you to give me the opportunity to talk to all of you, and especially those who are currently in Liberia. And let's hope that this virtual meeting might end up in a real one day, or a real workshop with all here present, and that we can do that in Liberia itself, because I believe it is so important that we do this now at this moment virtually, but it is equally important that we can continue doing this, and that we will do this later in a later stage in real life with everyone here around the table, because everyone here has its own story. Everyone here can contribute to this workshop, which I really am convinced that we should do that in the near future. The sooner, the better. But Starting with this, let me try and guide you a little bit through the world of aviation and how aviation can be of matter in this so important subject of human trafficking. And while it is not a core task of an airline to fight human trafficking as such, it is part of our world and it is part of our responsibility towards it. And that's why I want to guide you a little bit through this and to give you an airline's perspective. So if I can show you the first slide, please. So in here, I don't have too many slides, so I don't want to make it one of these presentations with a lot of graphs and other things, but just as to support me and to guide you through this, I want to start with this. What is Brussels Airlines and what are we standing for? It is, when we come to the subject of human trafficking, we have to go through a whole way of understanding what we are and what we stand for. And that's what I try to explain with this. So you see Brussels Airlines here. And the first point I want to show you is the experience of Brussels Airlines, the experience more specifically on the African continent. What is the link of Brussels Airlines with the African continent? And that is something that goes way back. That goes way back to the beginning of the 1900s, the 1920s and 30s, when Sabina, you probably know Sabina, was founded. And because of the connection with Congo and other countries, they started flying there in the 30s. So there was already a deep connection from another point of view, of course, but that continued. Sabina went bankrupt, but fortunately Brussels Airlines was able to take that to take that role and continue flying to connecting the European continent with the African continent, and by extension actually connecting the world to the African continent, because that is very important. We at Brussels Airlines, we always believe that you don't fly to Africa just out of opportunistic possibilities. You fly there because you feel the need that you have to fly there. It is a continent with so many possibilities, but you need to have that experience to come over the hurdles you meet when you fly to the continent. So Africa has been a constant focus in our network, and that's why we say we don't want to leave it. And you've said it already in your introduction. We have actually proven that we care about it, because it is so important to keep that connection even when times are bad. And we will unfortunately have bad times ahead of us in the future as well, but we have to work for the best possible. And even though if things are going bad, we need to keep that connection. So that is our experience with Africa, and we really want to position ourselves as the experts in that, and to respect each other and go for that. Now, my second way here is the involvement, and that really comes together with this this experience. The Ebola crisis is one of the examples of the past, which are very typical for this company. It was very, very difficult to keep on flying during the Ebola crisis to the countries that were affected. Liberia was one of these countries, together with Sierra Leone and Guinea, but we kept on flying because it was necessary. We reduced the flight schedule because, of course, it's not easy, but we kept on flying. We have been informing our crews, because our crews were hearing horrific stories, which are, of course, going on during these kind of crises. But still, we were able to get them engaged and involved in this matter. We care about it. So we kept on flying. And then the next point is actually personal. And this is really, really important to me. Again, in your kind introduction, you told me that I have a special connection with Liberia, and that is indeed the case. It was the first sub-Sahara country I ever visited, and I still remember that the door of the aircraft went open, and the first thing I saw was the airport of Monrovia, Roberts International, and it was honestly it was a shock at that point, but immediately you are aware of what people are doing here with the limited resources they have, how they do it. That's amazing, and that I cannot stress that enough. We from our side in the Western world, we think everything is normal, but that's not the case. the way that our colleagues in Africa are working, sometimes in very, very difficult and challenging circumstances, that's something we have to admire. We have to admire the way they do that. And it learned me how to appreciate this. And it shows that the strength of people is enormous, especially on the African continent. So I had that connection with Liberia, and it never disappeared. I visited the country several times, most of the time for professional reasons, of course. But when I had the time, I wanted to learn more about the Liberians themselves, because they're really, really nice people. So another connection I had with it, and that is already going a bit more into the direction of the subject of today, is that the first time I arrived in Liberia was exactly because we had an issue. We had an issue of an unusual amount of illegal immigrants coming out of Liberia. It was in the 2007, if I'm not mistaken. We had an unusual amount, and we had to investigate what was going on. To cut a long story short, we did discover that someone who was working for us from another company, but working for us, we contracted them, was being involved in facilitating people. Of course, this is something we cannot accept, because this goes in to every of our values. So we had to make sure, okay, this is something we cannot accept. So we started fresh. We started with a clean sheet, and we started hiring people to form a good security and profiling team in Liberia. And we found some great people. And even nowadays, still one of the persons we hired is still working for us. She's such a great person. She does her job very well, and we're so happy that we could turn this. That we got rid of the facilitator and all the negative aspects that came with it, and that we were able to build a beautiful local team of Brussels Airlines employees in Liberia who are doing a terrific job day in and out. And we see that in the general results of how the station performs. Another thing that makes it very personal is actually the title of this workshop, Trapped in Transit. I was working at Brussels Airport as a security officer at that time, and I was walking through the terminals of Brussels Airport. All of a sudden, I bumped into a child. That child was terrified. She was in panic. I was like, oh, at that moment, I didn't have a lot of experience, but I was, what's going on here? But she was totally in panic. She ran away from someone or something or something like that. I was able, together with my colleagues, to calm her down a little bit, and she started talking. She had ran away from a person that was accompanying her. That person came from the United States and was flying to Liberia together with this little girl. And this little girl realized that something was going on. She realized that she was not going to Disneyland, because that was what was told to this little girl. This little girl was told by her parents, who lived in the United States, that someone would accompany her to go to Disneyland, and that she would be waited for by her aunt and uncle. Of course, this wasn't true. She wasn't going to Disneyland. Disneyland turned out to be Liberia. Now, she discovered it because, of course, if you fly to Brussels, you're not flying to Disneyland. She got scared and she ran away, and she bumped into me. So with this girl, I went to the authorities and we started talking and to find out what is really going on. And she explained the story. She was accompanied by someone that she didn't know, but she was told by her parents that this person needed to be trusted and that this person would bring her to Disneyland at the end and to her aunt and uncle. What was the real story behind it? The parents wanted to get rid of her. The parents wanted her to send over to Liberia to go and work there, because then that was very hard to hear like that, but she costed too much money. So they sent her to Liberia to work there and to get actually rid of her. This was a heartbreaking story. Fortunately, she ran away, and we were able to help her further. And that is the good part of this story. We were able to help her. This little girl, she got in hands of Belgian authorities. Belgian authorities took care of her during a couple of months, and she has been hosted by a foster family in Belgium while we were looking for a solution. And at the end, the Belgian authorities found family members who were willing to adopt her. So not the father and the mother, that was a totally different story. And of course, she didn't want to go back to them, but we got some caring family members who are living in the state of Washington near Seattle, and they were willing to adopt this girl. And the girl, until today, she still lives with her new family in the Seattle area. And from time to time, we do get a message that everything is going fine. So that is really a story with, fortunately, a happy end. But this girl is now happy with her new family. But she was really, in that sense, trapped in transit. So I couldn't think of a more typical story to give you in this presentation. Now, from personal, we go to protection. Protection, what does it mean? Well, protection is actually that all of us, we want to be protected. We want to feel protected. And I'm working in a protection department. So I do care about this, this subject, and I do want to help as much as possible. Safety and security are #1 priorities of airlines. If you read through airlines visions and other things, everyone will say safety and security are #1 priorities. I cannot agree more, but where we try to differentiate is that the security and safety, that it's part of a bigger goal. It's part of to protect people. We want to protect our guests. We want to protect everyone that comes on board. And we want that everyone who is on board of an aircraft to Brussels Airlines feels secure and safe. So the well-being is so important. We need to feel protected. And then the last thing I want to show you here is our vision. And that is the vision of Brussels Airlines is we will be the most reliable airline where everyone feels at home. And I want to focus on the second thing. Everyone needs to feel at home. So if you travel with us, you need to feel at home. And that is a culture that we want to strive for. And to feel at home, there's no place for human smuggling or human trafficking. There's no place for that. You need to feel at home. If you're on board of an aircraft, it has to be voluntary. You have to make sure that you want, that it's you who wants to travel and you're not traveling because someone else wanted to. No one can be forced. No one should be exploited. Again, you need to feel at home. A statement to support the vision, and that's also part of our culture here, is that we take our responsibility towards the environment and society. Always these kind of sentences, it's really nice to hear, but you have to take it you have to put your words where your mouth is. So that is very, very important, and we take that serious. So that was a little bit about the culture within and how we come to then the real subject, the human trafficking. Now, human trafficking, we've heard it a lot nowadays, and as an airline, we are held liable for numerous things. One of it is illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is not human trafficking, I know that, but these things are sometimes linked. Authorities all over the world, they have their rules and regulations. And in times of COVID, even these rules and regulations have become more complicated than ever. And for the first time in history, immigration rules have been mixed with health regulations, which make it far more complicated. And airlines are being fined a lot of money for each and every passenger that thing to this by means of extensive document checks of all people who want to travel. And that's how we want to fight the part of the illegal immigration. But as I said, everything comes together at the end. The reason we have to do these checks, the reason we have to do checks for illegal immigration, yeah, that's not tackling the root cause of the real problem. It's a worldwide problem because people are looking for a better life. There's a reason why they're looking for a better life, because things need to improve, but then as a reaction, there are a lot of immigration rules. So it creates a nasty side effect. It's because we cannot move freely around because of all these rules, that people are exploiting this and they are finding ways on how to get people migrated all over the world. illegally. So we get from illegal immigration to people who help and facilitate those persons who want to migrate. So illegal immigration can turn into human smuggling. People are so desperate and they are willing to risk a lot in search of a better life. And one example is the use of fake and forged passports. People use all of their savings to buy these guidance from facilitators and to use fake and forged travel documents. They are told fairy tales that with such documents they will reach a better world and a better life. But often reality can strike really hard when that is not the case. And while human smuggling is still with the consent of the person who is being smuggled, human trafficking is against the will of persons. And that's, of course, what makes it much more worse than anything else. It's one of the most despicable ways of treating fellow human beings. And what I heard from the very strong testimony earlier on, of course, the dignity of people, that's so important. And again, that's within our culture. So we need to fight this human trafficking. So as you see, there is a big difference between the illegal immigration, the human smuggling, and the human trafficking. But out of an airline's point of view, these three come together. We have to fight these three, and because they're all linked to each other. So if we go to the next slide, please. So there you see Brussels Airlines and our fight against illegal immigration. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. We are actually fighting organized crime. And although Brussels Airlines is not involved in law enforcement, Brussels Airlines recognize the problem. And we believe that we can assist in identifying the problem and creating a lot of awareness for it. As an airline, I believe it's our role and responsibility to respect two aspects of the fight against human trafficking. We have to report suspected cases of trafficking persons, whether it is on board of an aircraft or when it is on the ground. We need to be able to recognize this and to report this. And also something we commit to is that our personnel needs to be subject to internal report, that it's part of an SMS system. And an SMS system is a safety management system or a security management system, depends what you use it for. And this makes statistics and intelligence gathering on the issue of trafficking persons. So also we need to find out where do we have issues based on statistics, and then intervene to make sure that we can take the right measures. So I said before, but an airline is not only active high up in the skies, but also on the ground. And that's in fact where we need to start and try to identify human trafficking. If we can stop it even before the flight takes place, it's better. But of course, we need to do that as early as possible. Also, I want to point out, it's not only the airline, of course, that has its responsibilities. It is also the authorities, the airport authorities, police, even military, depends who's in charge of the airport. And the authorities should help us, and we can do this together, but we should establish training requirements for all people that work at the airport on identifying and responding to trafficking of human beings. We have to ensure that procedures are in place to combat trafficking in person, including clear reporting systems. So it's always about this responding and reporting. And we need communicating roles and responsibilities as part of a national reporting process. So it has to go further than just the airport. To give you an example, in Brussels, here at Brussels Airport, we have a committee that organizes sessions in the battle against human trafficking. And this committee has created a basic checklist used to recognize human trafficking. And those who were here yesterday, you've seen in the presentation of Atlanta Airport, also some of these indicators. And that's really important that we keep on repeating these indicators, because it are these indicators that will help me and you in recognizing potential human trafficking. So again, this committee here in Brussels, they focused on some of the indicators, and although let's say 90% is the same, there's always, or some of the indicators are different, but they come from the same mindset. We have to look for a specific behavior. We have to look for ways that people are behaving themselves, which is not normal, or we feel that something is wrong. We all know the gut feeling itself as well, and that gut feeling can also be supported by these indicators. And what we tell the people that which are working for us as frontliners, as the ones who are dealing with passengers, talking to passengers, and so on, is there's nothing wrong with starting a very informal conversation. Just show interest in where you're going. Why do you fly? First time flying? Are you visiting family? Where will you stay? What are your plans? Do you have anything specific you want to do, you want to visit? Really start a very simple conversation. But during such conversations, we can see indicators. We can see some of the indicators that we talked about. So use really simple questions to get to these. So the indicators we're looking at, and that were mentioned on the checklist that was provided by the Belgian authorities, is one of the first things is, if persons are not holding their own travel documents. Of course, you have to put this into perspective, because we as an airline, we have to check documents. We check these documents, and if a family is approaching, it is quite possible that the father or the mother are taking all the travel documents and placing them there in order to have them checked and looked at. That is possible. So it's not because one of the indicators is showing that it's really a problem. You have to put everything into perspective. If you see that someone really cannot get hold of their own travel documents by means of, for example, if you would give a travel document back to its owner, and all of a sudden someone else is grabbing it really like, no, you cannot have it, then you might think, what's the reason behind this? Another way is, I told you, really simple questions to start a conversation. If that person wants to avoid the conversation, avoiding to answer the question, or simply not able to answer the question, that might be a flag as well, a red flag. Same goes actually not willing to cooperate. Or look at some more subtle things, like if someone is looking over his or her shoulder, looking for some kind of confirmation from everyone. If they're been asking a question that they don't really know what to answer, and they're looking for some confirmation of someone else, that could be a sign that this person is not really knowing what they're gonna do. Another aspect can be, if you get an answer from someone, that it looks like an answer that is studied, that is told by them. You have to answer this. And if people are reacting in that way, just giving you basically a correct answer, but telling it in a way that you feel this is not natural, then that could be a sign as well. If you ask a question to someone and someone intervenes and wants to speak in name of him or her, that also can be a sign. The sign I saw with the story I told you about the little girl that was running away in Brussels airport, she showed signs of fear. That was, of course, very obvious that something was wrong. Also, keep your eyes open. There are a lot of non-spoken behavior as well. Look how people move. Look how people are, for example, they're waiting for a flight. Someone wants to, the victim wants to go to a toilet, but isn't allowed to, or is escorted even to that toilet. So if you see this kind of non-natural behavior, that could be a sign of we have a potential problem going on here. So looking at people and they're trying to avoid eye contact, again, by itself, it's not that bad. But if you again put it in context and you have several of these indicators, it might show you something is wrong. And of course, another very easy thing to see is, imagine you travel from Liberia to Belgium. We all know that in Belgium right now, it is really cold, it's raining, it's windy. You're not gonna travel to Belgium in your shorts and your flip-flops. That might also be an indicator that this person is not really aware of what they're doing or where they're going. So again, this can be an indicator that could show this person is traveling against their will. Also, it's not only the victim or the potential victim that you can keep an eye on. It's also the person who is accompanying them. Does that person look nervous to you? Does they really interfere all the time? Or do they become rude and or they ignore you, that they want to block the conversation? That all these things might be a way that people show something is not right. When you see this kind of indicators and you don't feel well, or you feel something is going wrong, do not hesitate to contact, for example, a colleague or a supervisor of yours, because they can help you in either having the same opinion at the end, and then most likely something is really on, or they can put it in perspective. If people are afraid, again, all these indicators, you have to put them in a certain perspective. If someone shows signs of fear, yeah, maybe it's because they're flying for the first time. It's not always easy to differentiate that fear from another kind of fear. So you really need to make that story and to make sure something is going on. Not these indicators at itself are not always issues. They can have an explanation, but we have to have a look on them. So you have on the one side the victim, but on the other side the facilitator or the companion. Also, they have indicators that we can look at. I cannot emphasize enough also the need to have a standardized reporting system, reporting these suspected cases of trafficking on board, but also on the ground. And that is something we lack as an airline. This reporting system does not really exist worldwide. Of course, we work together with authorities in the different countries, but also in Belgium, but there's no such system where we can go to and each and every problem we had will be dealt by this authority. So the reporting, a standardized reporting system is something we really need and is something we really ask from authorities in general, not only for the Liberian authorities, but really from the authorities all around the world, at least for Brussels Airlines, where we fly to. Whenever you see that human trafficking also is going on, or you have at least the impression this is going on, it's also important that that you keep to your facts and to what you can do. I personally believe you should not really interfere, because then your action could bring more danger to the victim even. So whenever it is obvious that you have discovered a situation of human trafficking, do not attempt to rescue the victim or to confront the trafficker or something like that at the airport. Therefore, we also have authorities. The fact that you recognized and that you reported these situations make you actually already a hero. And that is what you all are, heroes. So, of course, we have to look out for pitfalls as well. When you're looking at these indicators, let's take the example of an unhappy child. Well, not all unhappy children are being trafficked. I can imagine, and I speak for myself, that I was not necessarily always the easiest child, and growing up brings some pains and so on. And the smallest conflict with your parents looks like a world-sized problem. And I think maybe a lot of us here have, and I say that between brackets, of course, have hated your parents for at least 5 minutes when we were denied a candy and we had to eat an apple instead. It was at that moment the worst thing that could happen to me. And of course, if such a situation takes place and I'm looking bad at my parents and don't want to travel with them, yeah, that doesn't mean there is trafficking. So we really have to be careful when we identify this human trafficking. And in that sense, a clear protocol also must be created for reporting this potential human trafficking. If you make a false accusation towards a certain situation or towards a certain person, that can cause a very awkward and uncomfortable situation. We should not use this as an excuse not to report, but we need to point out that mistakes can happen. And at Brussels Airlines, we adapting the just culture. And if you don't know what just culture means that we accept that mistakes are being made. And to be more specific, I call it honest mistakes. So everyone here, again, is human, and humans make mistakes. And if we make a mistake, we must be able to admit it, and we continue, and we learn from that mistake. So even in doubt, it's better to save a person or potentially save a person and then make a mistake that this person was not trafficked or smuggled than the other way around. That's that should be a very clear message. We shouldn't be afraid of coming forward whenever we see something is not normal. And that's why I think it's so important that we reach out to the different authorities, and in this case, to the Liberian authorities. Brussels Airlines can provide its staff, so we can provide our staff with adequate training, but we will need the support of the authorities as well by means of having a clear reporting line where we can go with our concerns. And then I want to go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, I just show you some statistics, and statistics, it is what it is, but there you see some of our destinations, and I pulled out the absolute numbers. But to give you an idea about these SMS systems, how they can help us in fighting the everything from illegal immigration to human trafficking. So as you can see, some of the stations there are mentioned, and then you see on the left-hand side, you see the different colors. The first one, the blue one is 2019, the yellow one is 2020, and the gray one is the current year, 2021. And then you see the evolution of all the stations and how they are doing. And for to make it easy, I'll call this the illegal immigration part. There you see that some stations, or that a station is performing not very well. You see there's all of a sudden it becomes very high. That gives us the signal something is going on in that station. And that gave us the, we needed to go to this station and check what is really going on now. What is the reason of this high graph, meaning a lot of illegal immigration? So we went to investigate it, and again, unfortunately, we found out that someone that was working for us was involved in some kind of facilitation, not even actively, but passively, which is equally worse for me, because that person was in a position where he or she knew that what was going on was not right, but that person closed his eyes, and that's not okay neither. So we need to take action if we see some things are going wrong. Of course, identifying the problem is one thing, preventing it for the future is another thing. So again, we set up a program that will train our local people in this matter to make sure that we can perform as a healthy and good airline there. Another graph we use to see is the graph on the right. And there you see the differences where we look at what kind of illegal immigration do we have from these countries. And everything which is red is regulatory. So that means that if people are traveling with a passport that's been expired, that's not good. But these are the things we can avoid easily by doing our job, reading the passport, and make sure that no one with an expired passport arrives at a destination. But it's not really like this is the things we are looking for in human smuggling, or even worse, human trafficking. There we go to the other specifics, and you see that the yellow part is, for example, forgeries and fakes. That is how many times we stop forged and fake passports before they come on board, or forged and fake travel documents. And this already gives us a view of what is going on in these different stations. This gives us an idea if there are a lot of forged and fake passports, that might show that there is a network of human smuggling or potentially human trafficking going on. So this really, these clear figures give that information to us. The same goes for imposters. Imposters are persons who are traveling with real and valid documents, but not their own. They look like the person who is on the picture, but they're not the person. So they are being, again, facilitated by someone else in this matter. And then the last color you see UTR. UTR means unclear travel reasons. And that's also a very important one to to keep an eye on. Because if you talk about unclear travel reasons, that means that these persons are traveling with correct documents, with correct travel documents, a valid passport, a valid visa. They arrive at their destinations, but they're still not allowed to enter the country, because when they are interrogated by an immigration officer, they don't have a good story. They don't have a good explanation why they travel. They don't seem to be able to explain what they are going to do. And also this can be a sign that something is going on, because if people don't know why they're traveling, or cannot give you a good reason to travel, then that is how it ends. So with this, I actually want to show you that as an airline, we have possibilities on how to detect certain behavior. We are not always directly capable of linking it to either illegal immigration, human smuggling, or human trafficking. But since these three are at a certain moment linked to each other, we are able to stop it, to be the last barrier before these people are really being transported. So that's where I think it is, and it will always be very important that we train our colleagues on the African continent, but also in Brussels and also in our other outstations, to get them aware, to create this awareness about the problem of human trafficking, and that we really need to stop it. And we, as a last barrier, we can stop it there, or we can try to stop it there, but we will need the help. And of course, we should never forget the root cause of the problems. Let me finish by repeating what other speakers emphasized as well. We need to train awareness and recognitions of human trafficking, but we may not forget about the root cause. Stopping human trafficking the moment someone wants to board an aircraft often means that these victims have been exploited already for quite some time. But I believe if we all put our shoulders under this and work together, then we can make it happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jory, for that powerful presentation, not only representing your airline, but also representing your personal story. It was great to hear your excitement about the time you touched down in Liberia for the first time. I can remember the first time I touched down in Liberia, and I had a similar feeling, a feeling of being welcomed by the country, but also the feeling of a new chapter opening up in my life. And that came through in your story as well. I want to thank you for your airline's commitment to Africa, because we know as travelers to Africa, it's not always the easiest place to get to from other parts of the world. At the same time, there's so many reasons to travel there, and we're always hoping that it gets easier so that we can build that global community that is only made possible in part through air travel. So thank you for all of your contributions to that. We have a question that came into the chat box, but I also have a number of questions that I wanted to ask based on your presentation. Since we're on the topic of personal stories, I'm going to start with the question that we got from Sibo. He says, the story of the little girl is very touching. He said most Liberians face difficulties with their kids, especially when they get to the United States, with the change of behaviors. As a result, sometimes they want to send them back to experience some hardships as a means of discipline, but they don't let their children know this, that's part of the parental guidance of sending them back home. So the question is, how should parents or guardians send the kids back home without creating a false narrative that it could be seen as trafficking? I think maybe this question in part comes from the fact that due to travel expense, sometimes people say to their friend who's going to Liberia, can my child travel alongside you to get back home, and I'll stay here, they'll go and you'll be the guide. So there might be that case of someone who's not related, et cetera, kind of being together in the airport. Can you address situations like that and put the parents' minds at ease about helping their children move back and forth?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not because a child is sent back or traveling with someone else that we immediately talk about human trafficking. And there I want to come back to one of the first slide I actually showed, and that's our experience with Africa. And I believe that is so important that we keep that in our culture, because that's where we see that let's call it by names, in the Western world, most likely we wouldn't send our child with someone we don't really know. But in the African culture, we notice that these things are happening. So again, it's all about putting it into perspective, and it's these indicators which are so important. And you look at the indicators, and at the end you make an evaluation. And we've seen it numerous times that children are sent back and forward to visit family or to visit friends, and because they cannot travel alone, they travel with a friend. And in the African community, we have a lot of friends because we know each other, and especially when we travel. I don't want to derive too much from this question, but something that is really beautiful, what we see when Africans are traveling, is when someone gets stuck or when someone gets in trouble, they help each other. If they know each other or not, they help each other. Well, other let's say cultures are not in that way. They just think very selfish, and they continue. So in that perspective, I can see it that it is possible that people are sent, children are sent back and forward, even though they're not accompanied by their own parents. It is sometimes difficult to make the distinction, but of course we understand that it happens, and we will not see every person with a child as a human trafficker.
And I actually really appreciate your very nuanced answer. The fact that as a company, you're saying, pay attention to culture. We know culture, we care about your cultural norms, and we want to make you able to travel within your own cultural way of doing it. You know, I've seen parents say to their kids, particularly when they're traveling internationally or back home for the first time, they say, pay attention to the other Liberians around you. And if you don't know what's going on, just go up to one of them and ask them, you know, so they already have this norm of trusting fellow people from the country and wanting to understand that there's a norm of care that just exists within that community. So it's wonderful to see you sort of say that from an official perspective from Brussels Airlines. We got another question that I think in a way is related. And I'm going to mention that question to you. This person says, you know, how do you react when a suspected perpetrator of human trafficking that you're, you know, trying to assess starts saying that you're interfering in their private affairs, or, you know, they sort of pull out that excuse that, wait, you're getting in my personal business. How do you respond to that? And it could be someone suspected of trafficking or someone who's not trafficking. Either way, they could levy that self-defense. How do you respond to that?
It's always very case specific, of course, and again, a lot comes from experience, but to have the awareness. If someone responds like that, then you don't have to keep on insisting, for example, in asking questions, but you back off a little bit and you observe, because observing will teach you a lot more than try to convince that person that he's a human trafficker, for example. This might sound a little bit weird, but it is really like that. So back off a little bit and observe what is going on. And if you see that the person that you suspect to be a human trafficker is then going back to, or is going to get seated with the potential victim, and you see the reaction of that person towards the victim, out of these kind of behavior, you can learn a lot, and you can see something is not right, or the other way around. Let's say that the victim itself was also shocked because he or she wasn't being trafficked, and they're like, my God, they're treating us here like something is going on while we are normal people traveling. So really, my suggestion would be take a step back, observe a little bit, and then see what your next action is. Also, don't hesitate to inform a colleague. Say,
I think you froze briefly.
Okay.
But can you just say the last sentence again? I apologize.
My last sentence was actually never hesitate to ask a second or a third opinion. Explain a little bit what is going on, and if you have another opinion, more people know more than just one person.
Right. I mean, I think that you're actually giving us a window into the mind of how security professionals think. I mean, I love your point about how, you know, noticing pieces of information that don't align. You know, we all kind of have a sense of what's normal, and you say you kind of trust that gut sense when things aren't lining up, or you're seeing more than one indicator. You know, sometimes one indicator alone isn't enough, but when you see more than one, and just that observation will lead you there. That's a great point. Someone has asked a question about how you determine an adopted child versus a trafficked child on a flight to another country, and, you know, sort of how you make that distinction. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and there we are, let's say, also helped by certain documents, because this is not new neither. We do see it regularly that children are adopted, and honestly, sometimes if you look at their little faces, they look scared, because they're being taken away from the environment they know. They all of a sudden have to go on a big metal bird that they've never seen before, makes a lot of noise. So of course these children are afraid. And again, and this is it's a very good question, and I really like that people are thinking about it, because we do see indicators, but we have to place these indicators right, and that's the difficulty. Of course, we do see a scared child, and let's say a scared Liberian child with two white parents, or one white parent. Okay, what is this? Is this human smuggling? Is this smuggling? Is this trafficking? Is this adopting? We have to make that distinction, and that's also why it's very important that authorities provide us with the necessary information. A good adoption process is key for that. An adoption process is not that a person goes to a village and buys a child and takes it along, even though they have maybe good intentions, because that's also possible, because the adoption process is for a reason very hard and difficult. And some people want to avoid that by just going somewhere and buying someone, but that's totally wrong. So a good adoption process is key in this sense, and that we can verify this, and that we can, if we have doubts, go to the authority and say, okay, we have a doubt about this, this and this. Can you please check it out if this is really an adoption the way it should be, or do we talk about something else?
Thank you. I got a word that Lena Wright has a question. If Lena Wright could be allowed to ask her question, we would welcome that. And Lena, you will need to come off mute to ask your question. Lena, are you there? All right, I'm not hearing Lena at the moment, but while Lena is getting ready, we got another question from Aramatha Fala, who asked, can the airlines ask IATA to prepare a specific course that they can take on human trafficking as a safety issue?
Absolutely. And one of the good things nowadays is that different authorities are getting engaged in this, and they are creating different trainings. And I know that civil aviation authorities, for example, they have good connections with ICAO. With ICAO, and ICAO has very good guidelines on how to find this, so they can translate this into a training. Also, a big organization like IATA, which is very known in the aviation industry, provides these kind of trainings. But also, we as Brussels Airlines, we have some experience, and we can help it. And that's why I want to speak out here as well. I said it in the beginning, I'm looking forward to travel more again, and then more specifically, maybe let's go to Liberia and make it work, and give our expertise and help the people around the table here, the virtual table.
Thank you. I heard someone come off mute. I don't know if it was Lena. If Lena, if you're there to ask your question, please jump in. I'm not sure. She may still be having trouble. So let me ask a few more questions. And one is you had that nice table of statistics, and it was nice how you broke down the different categories of problems that you sometimes encounter at your different airports. And I was curious, how often or frequently do you review or update those statistics that you showed? Is that something you do weekly, monthly, daily, yearly? Like, how often are you updating and looking at those statistics?
Basically daily. But that's because in the Brussels Airlines world, I have a very nice team that works in Brussels, and these are security officers, and that's where I started my career as well. And they are in constant contact with our different stations, and they are also being appointed as a coach of these stations. And a coach means that they need to help out and to look for certain certain trends. And it's up to them to discover these trends and to see something is going wrong in one of my stations, and then to go and find what exactly is going wrong. And also, but this is then on let's say on a higher level. Every month I have to I also have to give a presentation internally to higher management within the company, and there I show these figures as well, and then we say, okay, this is a risk area. This is an area where we see suddenly a lot more what we then call in the terminology inadmissible passengers. So what is the root cause of this? Should we look further? Is it a one-off? What's going on? So at least once a month, these figures are presented to a higher level, but on a daily basis, we keep on looking at it and making our stations aware. Oh, this is going on. This is what you see.
And then so you have security teams at each of the airports that in turn do the investigation to kind of analyze why the statistics are changing. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So in Brussels, it's centralized, basically, and they keep contact with the local security teams to find out what is going on.
Okay, we just got a new question in from someone at the Carter Center in Monrovia, and they said Brussels Airlines is one of the leading airlines to Africa, precisely Liberia. How do you think to replicate the message to common people about your experience with the little girl so that people can have confidence on your flights?
Well, just be yourself when you're traveling, and we need to again. It all comes to these indicators, and it's very difficult to explain this, but it's I really want to tell you I understand what is going on, and that is something we need as Brussels Airlines. What we need to train. If I have new people working for me in my department, for example, I always tell them, travel to Africa, go to Africa, because you need to know how what the culture is. You need to appreciate the way people are working there. So it is such an important thing for us to learn the culture, to learn certain of the habits. And I'm not going to claim that we are Africans or becoming African. No, but we need to understand what is going on. We need to understand how they react. There's so many different ways in how people in Africa are behaving towards us. Some cultures or in some countries, they're very talkative and they want to discuss everything with you. Some don't want to say anything, but at the end, they want the same. So it's really important for us to understand how what the mindset is and what the culture is. And so I can only tell you that out of Brussels Airlines, we do our utmost to understand the culture. And if we understand the culture, then we can help you, and you can be sure that you're traveling securely and safely on board of our flights.
Well, one of the things I know is that in Liberia, your office is very prominently located right there on Tubman Boulevard, where most people pass, every day. And, there's always the option of hanging banners out right there with messaging about these issues that people, that thousands of people will see every day. So I'm so glad that you encourage your colleagues and coworkers to go to Africa to learn the culture. On cue, we have music. We have another another question, and this might be the last one. And that is, how can Brussels Airlines help local security in Liberia be more effective in tracking and the protection of persons? So I guess it's about a relationship, your security team to security teams in Liberia. How can that relationship be strengthened? What are you doing? What could you do more of?
Well, we can always do more. So, and we will do more, connecting and getting that that network and that reporting lines and everything I told before, and coming to Liberia. That's that's one of the main things, and set up that training, help each other with information. Information sharing is key, and help each other in it. And if we fight the same fight, then we will help.
Well, thank you. This has really been a wonderful conversation. I'd like to invite Honorable Blanford back into the conversation, just because I know she'd love to personally thank you for representing Brussels Airlines in our meeting this morning. And as she comes back, I'll just remind our audience that we're about to have a 15-minute break. So whatever time zone you're in, if you're in the United States, coming back at 10:15 a.m. Eastern time, if you're in Liberia, coming back at 2:15 GMT, and if you're in Brussels, coming back at 15 p.m. But before that, Cynthia, would you like to say a few words going out?
Sure, thank you very much. Jory, outstanding. Your performance today, your input, your feedback, your way forward, your solutions. This has been just an important and engaging conversation. I assure you, in our relationship with LAA and Hartsfield-Jackson and Brussels Airlines, we are going to get on the ground and work out an opportunity for this hands-on training with two of our strongest partners in the industry. I think this is a natural next step way forward, and you can believe we will be back in touch with you and your leadership to plan something in the very, very near future. So again, on behalf of our partnership team here, we want to say a special thanks and appreciation to you for all the good work you have done on behalf of your airline.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So we'll see everybody back in 15 minutes, where we'll hear from Laura Newman of the Carter Center. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.